In this lesson, we'll learn how we can start to control the rendered visibility of objects in Maya. So when setting up our scenes in Maya, we have the ability to get really detailed as far as the actual look of our objects. We can start to take certain objects and make them invisible to the render. We could take certain objects and have them not cast shadows. There's lots and lots of reasons where we might want to do this. We may have certain objects in our scene where maybe we want to be able to have them cast light and maybe bounce light onto our objects, but maybe we don't want them to necessarily be seen by the camera. Likewise, we may have objects in our scene where we want them to be able to be seen in the reflections of our objects, but again, maybe we don't want them to be seen by the camera or vice versa. So within Maya, we have lots and lots of control over these features. Now these are controlled on the objects themselves. So let's say, for instance, we have this scene here, and if we render this out, this is what we would get. Now let's say, for example, that maybe I don't want this little chrome object over here to be able to cast shadows. So I want it to be seen by the camera, but maybe not have any shadows that are interfering. So what we can do is select this piece of geometry, and then if we take a look underneath the shape node for this object and take a look down sort of toward this middle area, we have the render stats. Now if we expand this, this is where we can start to control the actual appearance of this object. So let's say, for example, maybe we don't want this object to cast shadows. Now if we turn this on, now save that image for comparison, and now you can see that the object itself is still visible, but we no longer have any shadows that are being cast by that piece of geometry. We could actually flip that around, and we could tell this object maybe not to receive any shadows. Now because there's not really much of a shadow being cast on this object, we may not see a tremendous difference here. But once this finishes rendering out, actually you can see that there is a bit of a difference. So this object is now casting shadows again, but it's no longer receiving any shadows either from the other object, and it's actually no longer receiving any shadows from itself as well. So if we get in here, you can definitely see a difference between what we had before and what we have now. Now again, we could tell this maybe we wanted some kind of a shadow to be cast in our scene for artistic purposes or for visual sake, but maybe we don't want this object to necessarily be seen by the camera or getting in the way of our scene. Maybe we just want to be able to see the result of our shadows. So again, we could disable the primary visibility, which is its visibility to the camera. And now you can see that the object itself is no longer visible, except we can still see the effect of the shadows because, again, we still have this object's ability to cast and receive shadows still enabled. Alright, very nice. So you can really start to see where you can gain a very high level of control over the final look of your renders. And really we can do this on a per object basis, as I mentioned earlier. So if we had, let's say, a piece of geometry like this orange tube here, that we like having this in our scene, but maybe we don't want this to be seen in the reflections of any of the objects. So we could take this piece of geometry and tell Maya to not have this be visible in the reflections. And you can see, again, object is still completely visible, but now if you take a look at what we had before and what we have now, if you look very closely, you can see that this little orange tube is no longer visible in the reflections of this other object. Okay, and you can see it's also not visible in the reflections of these little chrome pieces around here either, whereas before we could start to see a fairly decent amount of reflection happening from this orange object, and now you can see that object is no longer being seen at all in the reflections of this chrome. Okay, so again, as you can see, lots and lots of control that we have over our objects. Now, unfortunately, this is really sort of an all or nothing proposition. We couldn't have this set up where we have maybe one object that is visible in the reflections of one object, but not visible in the reflections of another. If we disable its reflection, then that applies to the reflection of all of the objects in the scene. Okay, so again, that's a look at how we can start to control the render stats of our objects inside of Maya.